and the revision of the Motor Vehicle Code, April 1st. Public hearing on Senate Bill 108, 124, 125, and 128.
Joint committee, subcommittee on the revision of the Motor Vehicle Code will come to order.
Glad to see you here.
Members who aren't here are excused, and we have a hearing on some bills today, and the first bill is Senate Bill 108, and I'll ask Dennis Rice to come up for the Motor Vehicle Division.
And they want to refer them to their bill book.
In your bill book, the blue book, behind the tab for 108 is 108 and a measure analysis. We have the new helper?
I think so.
Okay. You're a new helper. Were you here last week and I've forgotten? Sorry. Okay. Dennis, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Dennis Rice from Motor Vehicles Division. Senate Bill 108 makes sort of 4 house cleaning changes, and it eliminates some archaic language or provisions that were beyond the scope of the House Bill 2031 rewrite. And in Section 1, on page 1, lines 10 through 16, it deletes language relating to financial responsibility laws and deposits of more than 30 years ago. We believe that this language is outdated and there's no longer any need for it. And then Section 2, on page 2, line 34, deletes the provision that a city may require a report of a motor vehicle accident other than the state report. We're not aware of any city that now requires drivers to file separate accident reports, and so this proposed amendment will more accurately reflect the long-standing practice, as we understand it, of cities just receiving copies of the, quote, state report. Okay, Section 3, on page 3, lines 12 through 15, deletes the authority in this section for DMV to appoint driver examiners and to set their salaries. This language was apparently added back in the early 30s when Oregon began testing drivers. The Motor Vehicles Division already has general authority to hire employees, and their compensation is set through negotiations with the union and the executive department. We don't set their salaries. And then in Section 4, on page 3, lines 23 and 26, just corrects a reference to department from back in the days when we were Department of Motor Vehicles, and we proposed to change it to just division, and it will require the deletion of the words motor vehicles just to make it consistent with most other references in the code to division.
On line 23, you're suggesting that if we delete motor vehicles that and
We could just
make that language well, just use division instead, that it would be consistent with the way it is in the rest of the chapter.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Fry?
where is it that the authority for the cities to require independent accident reports is eliminated?
On page 2,
Page 2, line 34.
33 and down. There's someone from the cities here that I will ask to comment on that.
Okay.
But you have a question for
No,
Dennis?
I mean, I want to understand that thing because, and I'd like to ask Claudia a question.
No, Dick.
Claudia, was it during the interim when or do you recall that I ever did raise the issue about the fact that doesn't have anything to do with this bill, but I was just reminded of where the city, sometimes the city police choose not to file an accident, not to make an accident report. And that ring any bells with you? I don't know where did I talk to you about that? Okay.
Okay. While we're on that part of it, I've made comments about the cities and that part of the bill.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Dick Townsend with the League of Oregon Cities. Actually, I was just here to listen for a few minutes, but any comment that I would have is that the language on page 2 is conducive to what we now do, and that is that we use the police report, or the state accident report. I don't know of any police departments that have their own that they wish to have on file in addition to that. So we find that this is, as was stated, more accurately reflects our current practice.
Senator Fry?
I'll have to run that by me again. Are you talking about this language on page 2?
Yes, Madam Chair. Senator
They all
Frye.
just use the state report to file copies and file copies of that.
In particular, on line 34, I think, is where that was deleted.
Madam Chair, I think
Senator
the
Simmons?
city of Portland used to file all of this and require a separate report, but I don't think they do now.
There was no, I don't remember hearing anything from them about any problem with that.
We haven't had an accident in Portland for 25 years, so I'm not too familiar with that.
I had one in 1966. I don't remember what I did. I had a concussion, so it was easy to claim that I couldn't remember. That's my problem. Does anybody else, while Senator Fry is investigating
No, I'm
the report?
satisfied now. I figured it out here.
Oh, okay. Does anybody else have any questions or any comments on any of this?
I would move it to the full committee with a recommendation.
Senator Simmons recommends that we send this to the full committee with a do-pass recommendation. Is there any objection to that? If not, we'll move right ahead. Whoops, Claudia has a...
Did you want to accept?
Oh, can we back up just a minute? You make one other little recommendation, which is on page 3, line 23, to make things uniform. If we would delete, in addition to department, also motor vehicles, and then it would just leave division, which would be consistent with the way we refer to it all the way through the code, because it's defined in the definitions.
And it would be a lowercase d.
Yeah, it would be, that'll be a correction. Is there any objection to that amendment, Senator?
You lost me. Where are you deleting?
On page 3, look on line 23. See where, I guess when we were amending this in the interim, it seems to me somehow it never should have been printed as motor vehicles division, because the standard reference to it is the division, the same way it occurs on line 26 and also on line 29.
Okay, so you want to take out motor vehicles?
Yeah, that was their recommendation, and that would make it consistent with the way it is on in all the other places in the chapter, where we just simply say the division instead of the motor vehicles division.
Anything for consistency.
Okay, if there's no objection, that will go along then as part of our recommendation. Oh, good. Okay, now let's go on to Senate Bill 124. And thank you very much, Joanne Peterson, on motor vehicles division.
Madam Chair, for the record, Joanne Peterson, representing the Motor Vehicles Division. Senate Bill 124 addresses sections of the Motor Vehicle Code which deal with which vehicles are exempt or subject to the registration and title requirements. Sections 1 and 5 make changes which would allow the division to adopt rules covering the issuance of titles to vehicles not required to be titled. Sections 6 and 7 apply the same provisions to the issuance of registration. Historically, the division has titled vehicles at the request of the owner, whether or not the vehicle was required to be registered or whether the owners chose to register the vehicle. The authority to issue these documents does not exist in current law. Vehicle owners of units such as off-road motorcycles and other motor vehicles, light trailers, for example, that have a registered weight of under 1,800 pounds, sometimes want titles for ownership protection and ease of selling or transferring ownership. Owners who frequently travel to other states may choose to register and title their light trailers to avoid difficulties in driving through other states which do require these trailers to be registered. Under Senate Bill 124, the division would be able to continue issuing title and registration at the request of the owner. The fees and procedures would be the same as for titling other vehicles which are not exempt. And if this authority were not continued, there would be some loss of revenue. Section 3 of the bill also deals with exemptions from titling. Current law subjects or exempt vehicles from title requirements and other provisions of the code based on such things as use, ownership, and weight. The law does not address what happens when vehicles which already have a title become exempt, such as when a motorcycle ceases to be operated over the highways. This section of the bill states that once a vehicle is titled, it remains subject to the code unless titled in another jurisdiction or unless the owner establishes that the vehicle is no longer subject to vehicle titling requirements by a method recognized or established by the division. Section 4 of the bill makes some wording changes in order to eliminate excess language. That concludes my written testimony.
Okay, so what you're saying is, we've now discovered that you weren't supposed to be doing those titles.
Madam Chair, yes, House Bill 2031 sets out a whole section under the title requirements that establishes exemptions. And while it appears that is the current statute or the current language in law, that wasn't that clear under the old code. And now it is very clear that they are exempt.
So are you saying that without this bill, you feel that you will not be able to continue to issue those?
Correct.
Because you don't have the authorization in law. Do you plan to do any changes in the way that you're doing it? It says in Section 2 that you can, by rule, provide for the issuance. Are you going to change the rules, or are you just going to keep on doing what you've been doing
Madam Chair,
illegally?
we would adopt rules that would cover this and probably provide that vehicles, at least of the type that normally would be registered if their weight was different or if they were used over the highways as far as not being used over the highways, could in fact obtain titles and registration at the request of the owner.
Senator Simmons?
Madam Chair, I'm trying to find in the ORS a part of the Uniform Commercial Code which talks about filing of security interests, which are, in the case of motor vehicles, boats, and airplanes, that filing is done by notation on the stick of title. And as I recall, the Uniform Commercial Code differentiates between property which is subject to title and which isn't. And I think we may be getting into a gray area on this business if they title property that isn't supposed to be titled. There could be a lien secured by the interest on the, excuse me, certificate of title as well as one filed in the Secretary of State's office. And we could have a double. You don't have to know the it's 79 something, I think.
Madam Chair, Senator Simmons, no, I don't, and I think you're correct that they do treat them differently, but I might also point out that that can occur under the law as it now written. If you buy a motorcycle or you buy a car that you might want to use as a race car, or you buy a light trailer, depending on how you use that vehicle or the weight is what determines whether you title it or not, and it can change from day to day or from owner to owner, whether it's subject to the titling laws right now.
Yeah, do I recall correctly, Joan, that you said that there would be some farm equipment that might be titled under this that normally wouldn't be? Small tractors?
Madam Chair, Senator Simmons, we don't now do that generally. There is another House bill, I believe, that addresses the titling and registration of implements of husbandry and farm tractors and farm trailers.
Let's see.
Joanne, I guess, let me ask a question while he's looking for that citation. You're not going to do rules that require...
Madam Chair, that was not our intention, no.
You're going to, if somebody has something that isn't required to be titled, and they come and they want you to title it, you're going to continue to do that.
Madam Chair, that is correct, and I would, presume that we would be sticking pretty much to the types of vehicles, again, that normally could be subject to titling. I don't think we would, for example, get into the all-terrain vehicle or some of these vehicles that normally would not be used on the highway at all. But motorcycles are, for example, a good example where motorcycles can be used off-road completely, or they can be used on the highway. And if the person wanted to title them, they could. They could obtain title to, say, a race car that was normally, like a stock car or something.
That's an example of the kind of a vehicle that currently this situation applies to. Do you have vehicles like that people have come to?
Yes, we do.
And I guess my point is, I guess my question is, I'm just trying to make very sure that we aren't changing something that is happening now. But if we don't do it, you will have to discontinue what you're doing.
Correct.
And then I want to find out
Yeah, well,
more
Madam
about
Chair,
Senator Simmons' concern.
Having it done in some cases and not in others would be, I think, even worse than if we say, I think for the sake of Uniform Commercial Code, you'll have to say that all titled equipment, the lien is filed by notating in the title, and then you'll have to decide what is going to be titled every time and what is not. Otherwise, the financial institution will have no idea where to file their interest or where to look to see if there's one already filed.
Madam Chair, Senator Simmons, you might want to take a look at section 60 of Senate Bill 100 or section 177 of the
177.
It goes through a list of exemptions which are basically based on the exemptions from registration.
Oh, well, 177 is in the bill. 177 starts on page 2, line 10, because I was just looking at the list.
It's been modified slightly by Senate Bill 100, but I think my point is still covered in that portion of it. It exempts things, for example, fixed load vehicles are exempt while operated within immediate construction site, but if they are otherwise operated on the roads, they would be subject to titling. Vehicles owned and leased contractor or requisitioned by the state forester are exempt, but if they were owned by someone else, they would be subject, and it goes on through that. I think to address the question that Senator Simmons is raising, it would need to look at probably the whole setup of exemptions from titling and question whether it should be by vehicle type or by these reasons that are current exemptions.
Okay. Where do you want to go with that, Senator Simmons? I'm not sure I
Well,
quite understand.
we have to either, first I've got to find whereabouts in this Uniform Commercial Code.
Okay. Keep looking and
What we need is a definite place for filing of whatever. And if it's to be done by a title, a notation, then there has to be a certainty as to which equipment goes there and which is filed as a chattel or estate. And I've seen it, but I just can't put my finger on here.
What's on the list of, well, with the vehicles that we're talking about, where are those things filed now?
If they are titled, they would be perfected by the issuance of the title showing that security interest. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the problem that he raises goes beyond the vehicles that we're talking
That's
about.
what I'm saying.
It goes into the current law, and almost any vehicle could be either subject or exempt by determined by its use, weight.
That's my point, is that I don't think we're changing that situation in this bill at all.
Well, we are if we're allowing them to issue certificates of title for chattels which are not now subject to a certificate of title.
Well,
In other words, she mentioned
we're not
the-
really doing that. They're titling all of these right now because they thought they could.
Well, if they thought they could but they can't,
That's what we found out with
and
the
somebody who has a lien on a farm tractor, for example, if that's one, and has filed it with the Secretary of State, and then a second party comes along and files a mortgage by notating on the title, one or the other is out of luck. And I would think maybe it's the one who uses the title, because the law now says that a farm tractor is not something that is titled. Do you follow me, or am it's so familiar to me that I may not explain it too well.
Madam Chair,
Joanne.
as indicated, there is a House bill that looks at the farm tractor issue, but just to use that example, a farm tractor, if somebody came to us with a farm tractor that they were using in relation to a agriculture operation, we would tell them it was exempt. But if they came with that same vehicle and they were not using it in an agriculture operation, by definition in the code, it is a motor truck, and it would be subject. So again, we're back to the use.
And the use could change. Here's one statement. If goods are brought into the state while a security interest therein is perfected in any manner under the law of the jurisdiction from which the goods are removed, and a certificate of title is issued by this state, and the certificate does not show that the goods are subject to the security interest, or that they may be subject to security interest not shown in the certificate, the security interest is subordinate to the rights of a buyer of the goods who is not in the business of selling goods, to the extent that he gives value and receives delivery of the goods after issuance of the certificate and without knowledge of the security interest. That really doesn't say what
We can check this out. Claudia, you,
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd be glad to check with those people representing banks and savings and loans, see how they deal with that now, and also check with the Secretary of State's office.
I'm surprised that some of the banking people aren't here, because I did bring this to attention of Frank Bronner and Don Fordyce, and they apparently were alarmed about it at the time, but may not have realized
during
this
the
was-
interim?
No, just in the last,
Oh.
since we've been meeting in this
Frank
area.
was sitting outside when I came.
Madam Chair.
Representative Lindquist and then Representative Harper.
Joanne, before you issue a title on a vehicle that is not normally required to be titled, do you check with the Secretary of State or any other agency to see if there are any kind of liens that would prohibit you from filing a clear title or something?
Madam Chair, Representative Lindquist, no, we don't, and I don't know of any place where you file by vehicle identification number and be able to determine whether those exist. I think the state motor vehicle file is the only thing where you can go in by the description of the vehicle. Everything else is usually related to the real property or something.
The chattels in the
Chattels
in the UCC filing are listed in very general terms, and they file by name of the owner.
Representative Harper.
Well, I guess I just wanted to say that I am totally in the dark as to the concern that's been expressed about this bill in regard to commercial code and security interests. I don't see the connection.
I don't understand the issue myself.
Well, when we first heard about this, I was under the impression that the Motor Vehicle Division had been issuing titles to chattels that titles are not normally issued to. And I was told, and my memory is that at that time there was some indication that that was included farm equipment. I think that was primarily what aroused my concern. And if there is a certificate of title, we'll say to a piece of farm equipment, an instrument of husbandry, and that title is used to secure a loan against that equipment. And there could already be a loan outstanding filed with the Secretary of State, which is the proper way to file that kind of a lien. And the procedures of checking for the existence of a lien on the property are entirely different. With the motor vehicle, it's done by the serial number and the make. With the farm equipment, it's done by the name of the individual and the location. So there could be a double mortgage of the same property, and this is what I don't think we want to get involved in.
Representative Lindquist.
Senator Simmons, if in fact a banking institution were to be in a situation like that, wouldn't they normally automatically go to, say, the Secretary of State or somewhere else where a chattel mortgage might be filed or a lien might be filed, and use that rather than just relying on the title
Well,
that's issued by motor vehicles?
if it is a titled vehicle, then it's not filed with the Secretary of State. And if it's a titled vehicle, they look to DMV for the existence of a lien. But if it's something that normally is not filed, then they wouldn't check DMV because there's normally no reason to.
I guess that's where I'm understanding it. If in fact you're not required to be titled by DMV, it's just something that you choose to do, then it seems that that would fall in the category of normally not filed or titled.
That's right.
And that they would go ahead and check with Secretary of State.
Well, but if there is a title out, and someone else can rely on that title to file their lien, then the Secretary of State would have no record of it. And that's what would be the confusion, and that there are liens filed in two places.
Well, Madam Chair,
Senator Fry.
I understand what Senator Simmons is trying to express, but I understand that that's already the way it is. I mean, if there's a problem, there's a potential problem there, but we've got it right now, is the way I understand it.
Well, and if it is, it's because the DMV has been issuing titles to vehicles that they shouldn't have been titling.
Madam Chair, Senator Simmons, that may be partially true, but as I indicated, it also goes into all of these other vehicles that are exempt or subject depending on how they're using it.
Yeah. See,
If I have a passenger car and I choose to use it as a race car, I may have come to DMV and applied for title before I decided to use it off the roads. And so it's...
But it's still an automobile law of a sort. But if you're titling a farm combine, just because somebody wants to have a title to it, then there is no indication to a potential buyer